loudly and clearly. Can you hear myself? Nice, thank you, because otherwise it's so loud in here. Can everyone just keep it down? And so the curtain rises on the 19th edition of the Stellenbosch. Rudolph, would you just call Kyle for me if you don't mind? Kyle is just standing behind you on the step. Would you mind just sending him up here? And so the curtain rises on the 19th edition of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Hello and welcome from wherever you may be joining us to the 2024 installment of the Sicmf, coming to you live once again from outside the Endler Concert Hall in Stellenbosch, South Africa. I'm John Woodland and I'm delighted once again to be your host for the next 10 days of chamber music magic. So how do these live streams work? Well, each evening at 8 p.m. for the next 10 days until the 14th of July, starting tonight, we'll be bringing you the evening concerts, the jewel in the crown of this festival. The first 7 are faculty concerts presented by the experienced musicians who lead this festival, and the last 3 are the student orchestral showcases. That's next Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and they all come to you from the Endler Hall just inside here to my left, and I'll be your guide during the evenings to introduce you to the pieces and to the musicians. And during each interval, I'll also be chatting to one of the faculty artists, and tonight I'll be speaking to a first-timer at the Sicmf, but someone who comes with a formidable reputation, especially for working with young musicians, and that's faculty conductor Michael Repper. Now, as always, on the opening night of the festival, there's an exceptional buzz here in the Conserve as we gear up for the first of our faculty concerts at 8 p.m, featuring music by George Walker, Beethoven and Mahler, and Caroline Shaw. And to heighten our anticipation for this first concert, let's look back at some of the highlights from last year's Sicmf, and indeed to this time last year, to the very first work that opened up last year's festival, the Goldberg Variations by Bach, in an arrangement for string trio. And here is the opening aria. And that was the piece that opened up the Sicmf 2023, the aria and opening movements from the Goldberg Variations by Bach, with two artists who've returned to the faculty of this year's Sicmf, Andrei Baronov, violin, and Jennifer Stum, viola, and they were joined there by David Cohen, cello. Now, as has become something of a tradition, let me start by sharing some words written by festival director Peter Martens to give some context to this year's Sicmf, and as we start thinking about the big 2-decade birthday that this festival reaches next year. And so, in Peter's words, the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, first held in 2004, is the brainchild of its artistic director Nina Schumann, who, together with fellow pianist Louis Macheliesch and one student assistant, put together a festival at which they expected around 50 students to enroll. Over 100 students signed up, and today our student participant intake has increased threefold. Perhaps even more important than this growth in numbers are the statistics related to diversity and transformation. At the first festival in 2004, precisely 4 students from the previously disadvantaged ethnic groups entered. And then at our 10th Sicmf, held in 2013, this figure was up to 19% of the full student body. Last year, in a completely unforced way and without the implementation of a quota system, 57% of the Sicmf student participant body were from previously disadvantaged ethnic groups. And in the words of our beloved late patron, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, who performed on the Endler Hall stage with the Festival Concert Orchestra in 2013, it gives so much hope for our children. I was deeply moved as I looked at your students from the so-called informal settlements playing those instruments. It says, wow, we have such fantastic potential. What an amazing country we have in it for us to become. And you, the Sicmf, helped us to hold onto the dream of 1994, perhaps an even more poignant thought in the wake of our recent national government elections. Peter continues in his foreword to the festival, I would like to thank all the participants, their parents and their teachers for cultivating this large and diverse family of like-minded individuals who, through music, are embarking on a life of service for the greater good of all our communities. I would also like to extend a special and sincere word of thanks to Louis Macheliesch, who's not only a founder member of the Sicmf executive, but an extraordinary piano virtuoso, a tech wizard, and an innovative thinker. Louis has dedicated 2 decades of service to the festival, and to a large extent is responsible for the current Sicmf image. We wish him well as he begins the next chapter of his career in the country of his birth, Portugal. We miss you, Louis. And while Sicmf bids farewell to Louis, we welcome 3 vibrant new members of the Sicmf management team. Logistics Manager Francesca Levenderis, Music Librarian Leah Patterson-Jones, and Finance Officer Lishen Chetty. I would like to thank Artistic Director Nina Schumann for selecting and inviting the stellar faculty, a group of internationally acclaimed artists who've chosen to add Stellenbosch to the list of world-famous music festivals they regularly grace with their presence. Nina has also outdone herself in compiling a mouth-watering program of gems old and new that will keep Stellenbosch on the global map of great musical destinations. I thank our sponsors, donors and supporters listed on the last page of the program and on our website, and wish you, our patrons and viewers from abroad or wherever you may be, much pleasure and inspiration from 10 days of chamber music magic. So there you have it, an opening message from Festival Director Peter Martens, which appears at the front of this program booklet for the Sicmf 2024. Now, if you're listening tonight and over the course of the festival, please engage with us. Drop us a line and let us know what you enjoy or don't enjoy so much using the hashtag Sicmf2024. And that'll help us to find your contributions and share them and engage with them online. Now, before we find out a little bit more about tonight's first faculty concert, let's cast our minds back once more to last year, to another highlight from the Sicmf 2023. Now, Every year, this Chamber Music Festival commissions a new piece of music that reflects on some aspects of South Africa's story. And last year, it was a new work by Michaela Alyssa Smith and Tina Scow called Lighting Our Stories, Tapestries of the Invisible.
My name is Bettina Scow, and I am a black woman of mixed descent. It is essential that I situate my story within the South African context. I am grateful and mindful of the fact that I come from a resilient bloodline of ancestors in which generations of our families and communities have survived and thrived despite the social construct of race barriers engineered to hamper our specific survival. I come from a generation of people whose her and his stories have been erased and invisibilized. It's vital to understand the colonizer's role in engineering the story of scientific research to champion racial hierarchy as a way of asserting racial dominance and superiority. This propagated the notion of racial purity and racial hygiene, which condemned the mixing of races as unclean and impure. The worth and value of one's identity rested solely on the manipulated scientific marker of race purity, which assigned Caucasian white the position of superiority on the ladder of race. One of apartheid's key social engineering strategies was the Racial Registration Act of 1950, which forced people to register from birth as one of 4 distinct racial groups, namely white, Indian, colored, and black. Black people of mixed descent were racially assigned the homogeneous label colored, perpetuating the damaging lie that we are the illegal descendants of miscegenation, thereby fixing our identity with a branding of bastards, shamed as unwanted, relegated as an impure half-caste, debased people. All evidence of our diverse heritage, from Cape slaves, the indigenous Khoi and San, African, Asian, and European settlers, was expunged. Colored became synonymous with inferior and worthless. And even though we know it not to be true, decades of bearing the indignity of this stigmatization and transgenerational trauma with its damaging affliction on the psyche makes it hard to shake the lie that we are less than. It has been vital to re-examine this imposed story of colored identity and interrogate how this label manipulated and shaped the person I've become. The author, Ben Okri, says, "It is easy to forget how mysterious and mighty stories are. They do their work in silence, invisibly, working with all the internal materials of the mind and self. Stories can be either bacteria or light. They can infect a system or illuminate the world."
a faculty concert that will be remembered for a long time. The opening minutes there of the first performance of a new work jointly written by Michaela Alyssa Smith and Tina Scow, entitled Lighting Our Stories, Tapestries of the Invisible. And do join us again on Monday evening for the fourth faculty concert for the world premiere of a new piece, especially commissioned from local composer Peter Bezuidenhout. And indeed, that's one of the beautiful things about the Sicmf, the juxtaposition of classical, contemporary, and very new music. Now, why don't we find out what else is going on in the Concerto foyer? At 6 p.m. was the official festival opening, in which faculty, students, and guests got to toast the Sicmf 2024. And you'll have noticed that even I am wearing my purple Sicmf regalia. Vicky Davis, Artistic Manager here at Stellenbosch University Conservatorium, is joining us tonight to tell us what's going on. So Vicky, over to you. Have Vicky just at the moment. We hope to bring you some sense of what's going on inside the foyer here. But I should mention that this 2024 Sicmf kicks off with music from the United States in the form of the Lyric for Strings by George Walker. He lived from 1922 to 2018, and this is one of his most popular works, who in 1996, George Walker became the first African American to receive the Pulitzer Prize for music. Walker's style is one that retains the classical forms of the Western canon, blended with a modernist-inspired melodic sensibility. And this lyric that we'll hear tonight as the first work that opens up this festival was originally titled Lament and was part of Walker's String Quartet No. 1, written in 1946. And later, Walker arranged this movement for string orchestra, which is the form in which we'll hear it tonight. So I'm going to head inside the Endler Hall now to get a sense of what's going on the stage and to introduce you to the musicians. So to get you into the mood for the passionately lyrical piece we're about to hear, here is another highlights clip from last year. 2023 was a big year for Rachmaninoff, as musicians around the world celebrated 150 years since his birth. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house after the Elegiac Trio No. 2 by Rachmaninoff, movingly played by Andrei Baronov, violin, Boris Andrianov, cello, and Anastasia Markina, piano. So here is the opening of that second movement. Yep, and can go whenever you're ready. And there you have now the first views inside the Endler Hall for the 2024 Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. There's nothing quite like seeing a stage prepared with music stands and empty chairs, some flowers, and of course these wonderful banners that we've come to know and love hanging there on the Marcussen organ here in the Endler Hall that remind us that this is the annual Sicmf. As you heard me reading from Peter Martens, the festival director, his foreword a bit earlier, this really is one of the big musical destinations in, if you like, the world's annual musical calendar, the way we're able to attract artists of such a wonderful and experienced caliber to this festival. You already heard me mention that the first work this evening will be the lyric for strings in this arrangement for a string orchestra by George Walker. And then after that, a piano concerto by Beethoven, but not as you might know it. The piano part is the same. Emanuel Ivanov will be the soloist, but he'll be playing, in fact, with a string quartet, so a transcription of that great fourth piano concerto by Beethoven for string quartet. And then in the second half, also what you might think of as a big symphonic work, but here pared down for a smaller ensemble, the fourth movement, the Adagietto from the Symphony No. 5 in C-sharp minor by Mahler. And then the final work is by Caroline Shaw, a very cool and exciting piece called Blueprint. So really, if you like, covering all the bases, spanning all the eras this evening in this first faculty concert. Remember, all the details are available online on our website, sicmf.co.za, in case you'd like to read a little bit more about any of the faculty artists or the program. And remember, we're also encouraging you to share your experiences with the hashtag Sicmf 2024. So if you're here, take a selfie. If you're watching the stream, take a selfie, post it on your favorite social media platform, tag us at hashtag Sicmf 2024, and we'll make sure to promote that, share it, engage with you. We'd love to know where you're listening from. And if you prefer not to take selfies or post on social media, please drop a comment in the streaming box on the side of your video to let us know where you're listening from and what you're most enjoying. So that's our program this evening. 4 works: the lyric for strings by George Walker, a transcription for piano and string quartet of the fourth piano concerto by Beethoven, then also a pared down version of the Adagietto from the Fifth Symphony by Mahler after the interval, and then Caroline Shaw's Blueprint, which closes off our evening tonight. It's already been a very busy day here in Stellenbosch at the festival, and you'll be able to see just how full the Endler is, of the student participants, of the guests who are joining us here in person, of the faculty themselves who tend to sit at the very kind of back presiding over their festival, or indeed many of them will be on the stage this evening. So in this very first work, and you'll see them come onto the stage shortly, Daniel Rowland will be leading the first violins, Farida Bakharova the second violins, Jennifer Stum the violas, Boris Andrianov the cellos, and Marichen Meyer the double bass. So our faculty artists leading this combined ensemble of faculty, but also students and well-known faces from the music scene around Cape Town. I mentioned it's been a busy day. We started off this morning, or this afternoon I should say, with a guest ensemble concert that featured the Stellenbosch University String Quartet. That was at 1 o'clock. That was followed by a public masterclass at 3 o'clock with Ekaterina Kornishina, flute, another guest ensemble concert at 5 o'clock with Mpangeni High School, and then the official festival opening at 6 o'clock just outside here, all culminating on this first day in this first faculty concert of the Sicmf 2024. The lights have been dimmed, as you can see. The door to the right-hand side of the stage has been opened, and any moment now the musicians will lead onto the stage, take their places at their seats, at their stands, for this first work on the program. You can probably hear the sounds of them tuning. So yes, don't expect any fireworks quite yet. Those are coming from the second piece and onwards. But the first piece tonight, I like to think, is really kind of a, I don't know, sort of a settler. Here we are at the beginning of the festival. It's a piece that really brings everyone together on the same page, celebrates what someone described to me in the foyer, really as a family reunion. That's a bit what it feels like, being back here at Stellenbosch at the Sicmf. A lot of the same faculty, a lot of the same students, musicians who love being together, playing together, making music together. And I think that's the way in which we should treat this first piece, the lyric by George Walker, as a very passionately intense piece, celebrating that, unlike the last few years, we can come together in person and make music. And so massive applause and appreciation for our string players. You'll notice many familiar faces, faculty, artists, students, participants. There comes Daniel Rowland, who will be leading this ensemble, taking his place, perhaps getting the biggest cheer of all. And of course, our other faculty artists who are leading their various sections. Gosh. Feels like we're at a rock concert. And so here to open up this evening's faculty concert, the lyric for strings by George Walker. It's nice to see the support staff getting just as much acknowledgement for their work in this festival as the musicians. They're hurriedly rearranging the stage now because we moved to a pared down version of the Piano Concerto by Beethoven. So that very first work you heard was by the American composer George Walker, his so-called Lyric for Strings, which, as I mentioned, was really just kind of a piece to settle everybody at the start of this chamber music festival for 2024. The fireworks are about to begin, shall we say. So yes, our next work is by Beethoven in this transcription of his fourth piano concerto from orchestra for string quartet. It's a cornerstone of the modern repertoire. Beethoven, as you know, wrote 5 great piano concertos, and this concerto was composed between 1805 and 1806, and it was premiered in a private concert in 1807 at the palace of Beethoven's patron. And also famously on the program for that performance were the Fourth Symphony and the Coriolan Overture. The first public performance then took place a little bit later in Vienna in 1808 as part of a famous and rather long concert that also saw the debuts of the Fifth and Sixth Symphonies by Beethoven and his choral fantasy. And this was the final time that Beethoven appeared publicly as a soloist. As was common in the standard repertoire era, the Fourth Piano Concerto faded into obscurity shortly after the premiere, until 3 decades later, when it became part of the famous revival of masterworks spearheaded by Felix Mendelssohn. And tonight's chamber version retains the original solo piano part, while the orchestral accompaniment has been reduced to a string quintet, the parts of which restored and edited by the world-renowned Beethoven musicologist Jonathan Del Mar, which date back to Beethoven's time. So indeed, a string quintet, not a quartet, as I mismentioned a little bit earlier. So Emanuel Ivanov is our soloist, and this work will comprise 3 movements: Allegro moderato, Andante con moto, and Ronda vivace. And there you can hear applause for Madeline Adkins, first violin, Suzanne Martens, second violin, Jennifer Stum, viola 1, Zandi van Dijk, viola 2, and Peter Martens, cello. In this chamber version of the Piano Concerto No. 4 by Beethoven, our second work, a big work, this time with fireworks, at the 2024 Sicmf. Deserved applause for our musicians there in that unusual transcription of the Piano Concerto No. 4 by Beethoven and the young Emanuel Ivanov, who made such an impression when he visited Cape Town last year, played the Rhapsody on the theme of Paganini by Rachmaninoff with our Cape Philharmonic Orchestra, the soloist there. And together with Madeleine Adkins and Suzanne Martens, our violinists, Jennifer Stum and Zandi van Dijk, viola players, and festival director Peter Martens as cellist. Gosh, how they leapt to their feet. As I said a bit earlier, it's like being at a rock concert, all this applause and appreciation for our artists. But what a great piece, and very refreshing to hear it in that transcription. You can really appreciate the detail of Beethoven's orchestral writing, the kinds of figurations that might get lost in the milieu of the orchestra. And now the piano, and amazing how it really works rather well as a chamber work. Still very showy, but much more intimate. Interesting for me how this really lends itself to chamber transcription. And that's the second piece this evening in our first faculty concert of the 2024 Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Now, regular listeners, viewers will know that we go out into the foyer for the interval now to have an interview. Tonight, our guest is Michael Repper, who's the faculty conductor. So I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Let me go and get ready for him now. Awesome.
You can introduce as Michael Repper.
Yes,
I'm Mike.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you. That's too familiar. And very welcome back. And a very brief word of welcome to my most distinguished first guest of this year's Sicmf, award-winning conductor Michael Repper, who's really come here with quite a reputation and is one of the most sought-after young directors of his generation and certainly in the world. So we're very grateful to have you here,
Thank you
Michael.
so much, yeah.
So with work spanning 6 continents, Mr. Repper, Mike as he's allowed me to address him, has an international reputation for engaging and exciting audiences of all spectrums and for promoting new and diverse musical talents. He's the youngest North American conductor and the second youngest of all time to win a Grammy in Best Orchestral Performance, and last year that was for his album with the New York Youth Symphony, which features debut recordings of works by Florence Price, Jesse Montgomery and Valerie Coleman, which achieved widespread critical acclaim and reached #1 on the Billboard chart. So Mike, thank you for making time.
It's my honor.
Seeing as we're in Africa, we'll reference the big 5, start with the elephant in the room, and that's this Grammy, which is remarkable because it's the first time a youth orchestra has won this particular award.
Yeah, incredible. You know, it was a real feat during the COVID pandemic. Of course, we did this with the New York Youth Symphony, where I was music director from 2017 to 2023. And when the world broke down in 2020, we couldn't perform, just like nobody could perform. So we decided instead, let's make a recording, because you can do that in a little bit more of a controlled environment. And so we picked works by 3 American composers that we really wanted to record and perform. All of them were works that hadn't been recorded before in one way, shape, or form. And so it was great for the young musicians to get experience with recording and for these works to get recorded, because they really should be recorded and shared. And, you know, we really did it. We started... The initiative behind it was to try to provide a genuine educational experience to the young musicians during the COVID pandemic when we couldn't perform. And it ballooned into this, you know, crazy thing of reaching, you know, #1 on the Billboard charts and then winning a Grammy Award is incredible. And I'll never forget the room. You know, there's a video of the young musicians in New York watching the Grammy Awards when they announced that we had won.
Gosh.
That they're just screaming. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so it was a deep honor. And yes, it is the first time a youth orchestra ever won a Grammy Award. It shouldn't be the last.
Yeah, indeed.
It proves that it's you know, something that anybody really can do when they put their... I think that the entire thing is a testament to how remarkable and the heights that young people can reach when they have the resources, when they have the energy, and when they have the inspiration and the energy to really go there.
Absolutely, and in
And
the
the
context of the
opportunity.
SICMF, I'd love to come back to that and
why I'm here.
working with youth exactly in general. But I'm intrigued to know, at what point did you get an inkling that this project was starting to perhaps balloon into something more impressive, amazing than you'd imagined?
Yeah, well, you know, we were in the studio. And the producer of the album is a woman named Judith Sherman. She's actually the winningest producer in classical music history. She's won something like 15 Grammy Awards for Best Producer.
So she knows the secret formula.
We were in the first day of recording. We knew it was going to be very good because, I mean, we knew that the product was going to be very good because this orchestra, New York Youth Symphony, is one of the best youth orchestras in the world, and we knew that it was going to be good. But we were there in the first day of recording. And how it typically works is you record a little bit, and then you go into the studio and you listen to what is, and so you get a sense of what's happening.
Right. If you need to make any adjustments.
Judy and I looked at each other and we said, "This is going to be very good. This is going to be extremely good." And so it was sort of in the back of our minds of, okay, you know, if we really do our job here and we really, you know, perform over the next couple of days of recording, we can have something. And at that time, we were really thinking, okay, we really want to do right by the composers.
Yes. Because that's my other question. It's not just kind of the quality of the playing, the performance, but the statement you made a bit earlier about this was music that was important to record. And we know Florence Price is going through a bit of a renaissance at the moment.
Finally.
Even our Cape Philharmonic Orchestra have programmed one of her works in the coming symphony season of theirs. So a little bit more about these other composers as well, and perhaps why you thought this music was important to record
absolutely.
and to expose the young players to.
Well, you know, I record a lot, and I get the opportunity to record not just conducting, but on piano or whatever else. And what excites me is to try to find music that I think isn't recorded enough, or that is fantastic music that I know that I really want to share. And the best way of doing that is in recording, because of course if you perform it, it's fantastic, and you should perform it, but that's a one-off.
And it's gone.
And it's gone.
It's
and
ephemeral.
And so recording is something to preserve for forever. And so, in thinking of what to record, I really wanted to promote these works that I knew that were fantastic. Justin Montgomery is a tremendous American composer writing today. Her music is fantastic. Interestingly, I didn't even know that she was an alum of New York Youth Symphony.
Is that so?
But I programmed the work, and then somebody told me, you knew that she used to play violin in New York Youth Symphony, right? I had no idea, so that was serendipity. Of course, Florence Price is a composer whom I absolutely love. And Valerie Coleman, of course. Valerie Coleman, her work, Umoja, was on the disc. I put that on the disc because Umoja is a Swahili word for unity. And I thought this was November of 2020, so we were all in
Feeling
separate
very
places.
dispersed.
And exactly, so the whole idea of performing a work called Unity was really special. And so, that's how they all ended up on the disc. My friend Michelle Kahn was the pianist on Florence Price's Piano Concerto. And everybody rallied around the project in a fantastic way.
How is being a conductor, a standard, if you like, adult conductor, different from being a conductor of a youth orchestra?
I don't approach it any differently. Music is music is music is music. I find that young people rise to the occasion when you treat them like professionals.
Yes.
And so that's sort of my mantra.
Yeah.
I actually would say that I approach working with youth orchestras exactly the same as how I approach working with professional orchestras.
And that's very much the attitude you'll be bringing to the
Absolutely.
Sicmf.
Absolutely.
Gosh.
Yeah. And of course, when you're working with young people and you're working with seasoned professionals who've been professionals for 30 years, right? Maybe your expectations are a little bit different. You might understand that, okay, some things may not be able to be, sometimes you may not be able to well, you're working with people who are going to, one day they'll have 30 years of experience,
Absolutely.
right? But it doesn't change how you work with them, and it doesn't change how you try to inspire them.
Yes.
And you actually find that youth orchestras can achieve absolute greatness when you inspire them in the same way that you hope to inspire professionals. And so that's absolutely how I go about it here. And I'm sure that the orchestra, I look forward to meeting them tomorrow.
Right,
Our first rehearsal is tomorrow.
Very good.
And I can already tell the energy in the room is just so high, and that's where great music is made.
Excellent. So that's Friday evening, and then Sunday afternoon we'll be right here in this space and watching this stream and listening to these concerts.
Thank you.
There's big music on the program.
Oh yeah, huge.
Bartok, Brahms
Bartok
double
Viola
concerto.
Brahms double concerto. With my Bartok concerto with my good friend Jennifer Stum.
Gosh, so you've worked together.
Yes, we know each other. And
then Borodin, the Second Symphony.
Borodin, Second Symphony.
These are big works.
Big works, and we're doing also a great piece by a Mexican composer with Vueltas. We're doing Sensamaya, which is challenging. Maybe the most challenging thing on the program. Very, very fun music. It should be really just great. Yeah.
So it might come as a little surprise to our listeners or those who are not familiar with the Stellenbosch Chamber Music Festival that we are talking orchestral music.
Yes.
And we have you here as a conductor, whereas most chamber music, strange to hear the Beethoven in that kind of reduced
That was
form.
thrilling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But without a conductor. So what is the value the students really get from this very large ensemble playing, working with an orchestra or conductor compared to the more intimate chamber music experiences and coaching they're going to have this week? How does that all kind of gel into their development of musicianship?
It's a fantastic question. You said the key word at the end there was his musicianship. Orchestra playing should just be large-scale chamber music. Conductors should approach it that way. The instrumentalists should approach it that way. It really is large-scale chamber music.
And could you unpack that? What are some of the qualities?
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me just start with what the conductor really does in this sort of instance, right? The conductor is really there to unify and inspire this performance from, in this case, there'll be 80, 90 people on stage, or maybe even more. Sometimes there reaches a point where there are so many people on stage that it becomes less possible to do it well without somebody up there helping to unify it. But the conductor's not there as a dictator. The conductor is there to facilitate what we hope is large-scale listening, where everybody's listening to each other in the same way that they're listening to each other when they're playing a piano quintet, as we just heard. So it's the same style of music making, just facilitated in a certain way. So it is chamber music. It's just done large scale. It's not done with 5 or 6 people. It's done with 80, 90, 100 people.
I think that's such a valuable insight because a lot of folks, particularly those who are maybe not musicians themselves, think a lot of orchestral playing is going onto the stage
Yep.
and just sort of playing your notes at the right time,
No, not at all.
almost kind of not oblivious, but it's sort of the conductor's role to bring everyone together. But
Yeah.
you mentioned that really important kernel there. They should be listening as well. So there's still this kind of involvement, responsibility in the music making,
Yeah.
as if it were chamber
The
music.
best performances are made when everybody on stage is connected.
Yes.
And connected with each other, and the conductor isn't doing their job if they aren't facilitating that. The conductor's job is to inspire that level of musicianship in the musicians, and to really rise to that. And then, of course, in rehearsal, you help on a practical level
Yeah.
to help it get there.
Yes.
Because, of course, the musicians only have their part. They don't know what other people have. And that really is one of the conductor's main jobs, is to help facilitate that kind of communication.
Yes. It's Bernstein
people.
or someone who said, the purpose of a rehearsal is not to learn your own part, but to learn everybody else's.
Yeah, in many ways. And
yeah.
the conductor's job is to sort of facilitate that in many ways. But yes, it is chamber music, and it should be approached the same way, which is why it's critical that young people study both chamber music and orchestral playing, because you learn things from both about how to increase your musicianship.
Absolutely, yeah. Become a master of your craft in all senses, whether that's solo recital,
Yeah.
chamber music, or orchestral performance.
Absolutely.
Are you able to reveal to us some of, going kind of even a touch deeper, some of the ways in which you're able to manage this as a conductor? Because you must have to tread a very kind of fine line, always pushing the musicians, wanting to get the best out of them, but not wanting to kind of demotivate them by setting the bar too high.
Yep.
I imagine you can't sort of lose your temper, which
you
some
know.
conductors are famous for doing.
Yeah. No, it's how I approach the job is that it's all about the music. You step on the podium and you're not representing yourself. You're representing nobody but the music. And when you approach it that way, it's not about bar setting. You're in rehearsal. You make it the best that it can possibly be. You don't come into it with an expectation that it must be this. You want it to always be better. Every minute that you're with the orchestra, you're making it better and better and better and better and better and better and better. And then the orchestra understands that you're making it better, 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 better.
Yes.
And you want, as a conductor, to impart to the orchestra that they're not playing for you. They're playing for the conductor. They're playing for the music.
Yes.
They're playing for
And
each
to
other.
do justice to the music, to the composers, the collective musical vision.
We're one big team. We're one big team.
Yeah.
And
It's a great analogy.
yeah,
for-
we're one giant
for
team,
music making.
and the conductor is in many ways like the coach of a good team. I think where the coach will see what needs to be improved, will give direction, and hopefully inspire a certain amount of teamwork,
Yep.
such that the team goes on the field and
Yes.
performs.
Yep.
There's a lot of similarities there, and so how I approach the job is that it's just all about the music.
Yeah.
Music at all times.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, these are great works. Very excited to hear
Yeah,
them in
it's
practice.
going to be great. I can't wait to get started
performance,
tomorrow.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
May I ask how you came to be here? What attracted you to Stellenbosch?
Well, I was honored for the invitation.
Right.
Of course, I know many of the faculty members who are here, and they speak so highly of the festival. I was invited by the artistic director, Nina
Right,
Schumann.
Nina. Excellent, yeah.
And it's great to know her, and an honor to have her invitation. And so
Yes.
that's how I ended up
Yeah.
here.
And first time, as we were saying,
first
just as
time
we
in
were
South
getting
Africa.
kind of mic'd up. Yes,
Yep.
indeed. Hoping to get up Table Mountain over the coming days.
Yes,
if there's
yes,
a,
yeah, I'll
a
make it
slot
up
in
there.
your schedule, and if the
Yeah.
weather agrees.
Fingers
so-
crossed. Knock on wood. Yeah.
Likewise. So, Mike, very nice to chat. I have a couple of cheeky kind of quick fire questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'd like you to respond immediately,
You go.
but you do need to give a reason for your answer.
Okay.
So, Bach or Brahms?
Oh my gosh, that's absolutely impossible.
You have to commit.
All right. Well, I do love Brahms, and there's certainly much more orchestral work to be done with Brahms. Without Bach, you could not have had Brahms.
Right.
So, what I will say is that I would say that I love conducting Brahms. But I also play piano, and if I were playing the piano, I would say Bach,
Right.
because nothing beats a Bach fugue,
Yeah.
and you would not have Brahms without Bach. So it's like the building thing. So I suppose Bach would be my answer. But
And a
that's
little
impossible.
diversion here. So piano was your
Yeah,
main
is
instrument.
my main instrument. I
That's
still
what you kind of
perform.
cut
I
your
still
teeth.
perform.
And at what point did conducting become attractive
was
to you?
8.
Interesting.
When I was 8,
Can you
I
find
was
the
at,
moment?
Yes, I was 8. Specifically, I was at a children's concert,
Gosh. Yeah.
and I'm shortening a story. It's a very long story, but I was basically put up on stage and given a baton and told to, hey, you go conduct. So I went up there and I did this, and I had no idea what I was doing, and the orchestra played.
Yes.
but it was so fantastic in that moment specifically that I said I absolutely must figure out what this was.
Absolutely.
So I started to conduct, and I
once
started
again,
studying.
this thread of youth, because presumably this is something you perhaps do as part of your outreach, or is occasionally perhaps step back, give the next generation the baton, and say,
you can watch my speech at the Grammy Awards. It's all about that. What can professional orchestra, maybe the most important job of a professional orchestra, professional musician, not just a conductor, but a musician. The most important responsibility of a professional musician is to look out for the next generation. Because without that, we're not growing as an industry. We're not growing, So of course you bring your own musicianship in you, but you should be constantly looking for how you can look out for younger people. That's why I'm here. So
we're very, very honored to have you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Back to the questions.
Go ahead.
Easier or harder, depending on Mozart or Mendelssohn?
Oh my God. Well, again, I don't want to. They're both so good. But again, you couldn't have Mendelssohn without Mozart.
Yes.
And Mozart. I mean, there's some of his music is just completely unmatched. You look at the fugue of the finale of his 41st Symphony.
Yes, the Jupiter.
It really doesn't get better than that, in my opinion. But of course, how can you argue with some of Mendelssohn's greatest works, his Third Symphony, his Fourth Symphony, his chamber music, his octet?
Yes,
but you couldn't have the octet without Mozart. So...
Okay, last time, then I'll put you out of your misery.
Right.
Schubert or Schumann?
Schumann. This one's a little bit
Not
easier
just because
for me.
our artistic director shares the name.
That's what I didn't even think of that. This one's a little bit easier for me.
Watching a bit later.
This one is a little bit easier for me. I just relate a little bit more to Schumann's music. I was able to get into it just a little bit more. And as a conductor, it's a little bit more fun to conduct.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
Mike,
nothing
thank you for
against
being,
Schubert at all.
But well. Maybe that opinion will evolve and develop, and when you come back to the Sicmf in future,
Fingers
you might
crossed.
feel a separate way. Maybe we'll have a leader recital. In fact, I've often wondered we should perhaps have more vocal music.
Hey, there you go. We could do with chorale for sure.
Anyway, you can hear the alarm bells. Everyone's going back inside. So the second half of tonight's faculty concert is going to be starting shortly. So it's time for me to head back inside. You'll hear back from me in a little bit. But first, we're going to just go to another highlight from last year's Sicmf, just to kind of set the scene for some of the music that's to come a bit later, the soundscapes, the washes of impressionist colour of Maurice Ravel. So here is the final movement, the Fairy Garden from his Mother Goose Suite, and a final thank you, Mike, for joining us. Now, you'll see you on stage in just a couple of days.
Yes, thank you for having me.
very evocative final movement of Ravel's Mother Goose Suite from last year's Sicmf. That was the recording you've just heard. But tonight we're back here in the Endler Hall for this live stream coming to you from the 2024 Sicmf, the first faculty concert. You'll remember we heard the music of George Walker and Beethoven in the first half. But now it's music by Mahler, and this is quite strange. It's not the kind of music you'd expect to hear at a chamber music festival, because it's the slower movements of one of his symphonies, the Symphony No. 5, and this is the Adagietto, which is very famous for its use as film music. It was used in that great adaptation of Death in Venice from several decades ago. But like Beethoven, Bach, Mahler was another composer whose works experienced a posthumous revival, and he really came to widespread public popularity in the 1960s, probably because of the use of his music in films. So this particular movement that we'll hear now has become a popular concert piece for orchestra. The premiere of the symphony was conducted by the composer himself in 1904, but it was, for the most part, a critical disaster. You know, Mahler in his life, some symphonies much better received than others. And he was lambasted by critics for the extremes of emotional expression, the expansive orchestral setting, the excessive length of this work, the kind of stuff that we now associate with Mahler. But the movement we hear tonight from the Fifth Symphony, this tender Adagietto, it's scored for strings as well as a harp, really struck a chord with audiences and critics. Many commentators consider the piece to be a love letter to Alma, his wife, and the popularity of this movement as a standalone piece was even recognized by Mahler himself, who conducted it without the remainder of the symphony many times throughout his career. And so I think a little bit of a treat for us to hear it this evening in this particular form. So once again, we have Daniel Rowland leading the first violins, Farida Bakharova the second violins, Jennifer Stum the violas, Boris Adrianov cellos, Marichen Meyer double bass, and then Ricardo Hineker is our harp player this evening. No doubt the performers are steeling themselves for this emotional piece. But then also I should mention the piece that comes after by Caroline Shaw, Blueprint, is a very exciting cap. It's going to be a wonderful cherry on top to this concert. So once again, I think wonderful programming courtesy of Nina Schumann, our artistic director, putting George Walker and Beethoven together with Mahler and Caroline Shaw. But for now, the Adagietto, the fourth movement from the Symphony No. 5 by Mahler. And as always, such appreciation for our faculty artists, our musicians, our student participants who are on stage at this 2024 Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. Well, Mahler sure knew how to write music that tugged at the heartstrings, and what a treat to watch a string ensemble of that size. I know I was talking to a conductor just some minutes ago, but to watch musicians so involved in their art, playing, listening, creating something beautiful together, co-creating would be the word. And Daniel Rowland, who led that ensemble, and indeed the first violins, Farida Bakharova, the second violins. We had Zandi van Dijk leading the violas, and Boris Adrianov, the cellos, Marichen Meyer, the double basses, and then Ricardo Hineker was the harpist. You can see him there assembling his instrument. And of course, he is a student participant at this year's Sicmf, which is really cool that these young musicians have the opportunity to perform with these incredible faculty artists. And as we heard from my guest, Mike Repper, in the interval, why should it be any other way? The musicians, regardless of their age, should be treated as adults, like professionals, because we're all in the business of making beautiful music together, and there's no need to then take a different approach. Everyone shares a common goal and a unity of spirit and intention in their work. Once again, you probably heard there some applause for the concert crew, the stage crew, who are just rearranging things for this final work, which is just for a standard string quartet, so the smallest ensemble we will have seen on stage this evening. And this is a very interesting work, and I'm particularly excited to hear it because I've watched the recordings online, but I'm a big fan of this composer. She's an American composer. Her name is Caroline Shaw, and she's made big ripples, not only with her instrumental music, but with her vocal music as well. So in 2013, just over a decade ago, she, who was born in 1982, Caroline Shaw, became the youngest recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for Music as a result of a piece called Partita for 8 Voices. It's a thrilling work. I encourage you to go and look at it on YouTube. But she was a member of this group called Roomful of Teeth, which performed this work, and this really kind of got her associated with contemporary chamber music. And she's collaborated with artists as diverse as Kanye West, as Yo-Yo Ma, the Attacker Quartet. And so tonight, her 2016 work, Blueprint, sees its South African premiere. And the piece's name is the result of essentially 2 inspirations. Firstly, the work is built on a harmonic blueprint that is essentially a reduction of Beethoven's string quartet Opus 18 number 6, which is one of the most influential and impactful works in the quartet genre. So one has this very nice line traced from Beethoven, whom we heard earlier in the program this evening, to the 21st century. But the second inspiration for the work is the group for whom the work was composed, the Azuri Quartet, who featured it on their Grammy-nominated album Blueprinting. And this word, after which the quartet is named, Azuri, refers to a Japanese block printing tradition that makes extensive use of blue ink, and in particular the famous pigment Prussian blue, which was imported into Japan in the 1820s onwards, hence literal blue printing. So all sorts of fascinating links there with culture, with society, unifying all kinds of diverse, disparate backstories. And so this work now, Blueprint, by Caroline Shaw, is going to be played by our faculty members Madeline Adkins and Daniel Rowland. Gosh, they've had a busy night on violins, Zandi van Dijk viola, and Maya Bogdanovic cello. And we're really happy to welcome Daniel and Maya back to the Sicmf this year. They were last here in 2022. Madeline and Zandi were here last year, but now it's really cool to have all 4 of them here together in the Endler Hall for this first Sicmf faculty concert and the final work on the program by the contemporary American composer Caroline Shaw, called Blueprint. So weird, but so cool. And as you heard just before the piece, they're drawing its inspiration from Beethoven, but very much with a 21st century flair. Caroline Shaw's work, Blueprint, and played there by one of our premier faculty string quartets, Madeline Adkins, violin 1, Daniel Rowland, violin 2, Zandi van Dijk, viola, and Maya Bogdanovic, cello. And yes, I hope they come out again. They deserve to after, how shall we say, constructing that work. One wonders what the score looks like. And so nice to see those bright colours as well that they're wearing, especially with Madeline and Maya, breaking the mould, the stereotype of classical music. Chamber music doesn't have to be dry or boring by any means. In fact, that's why you come to the Chamber Music Festival, to either dispel that impression or to really savour the wonderful magic of music that, as we've heard, crosses eras, background stories, and so on. Our first chamber concert has come to an end for this year's Sicmf. I'm going to pop outside to hang out with the audience and to say goodnight to you. So don't go far away. And remember, if you're watching, drop a comment in the comments, the chat, via whichever platform you're watching. And don't forget the hashtag Sicmf 2024 if you're going to post about this evening's concert. Well, that wraps up our first faculty concert here at the 2024 Sicmf. And I hope you enjoyed that appetite-whetting program of music by Caroline Shaw, and before that by Mahler, Beethoven, George Walker, and my chat with conductor Mike Repper during the interval this evening. Of course, here at the Sicmf, the festivities continue tomorrow on Saturday, the 6th of July. You can catch the guest ensemble lunch hour concert with the string ensemble from the Youth Orchestra of Namibia in the FISMA Hall just over there at 1 p.m. And then a masterclass with visiting faculty member and Sicmf regular, whom we've just heard, Madeline Adkins, also in the FISMA at 3 p.m. And then at 5, there's a guest afternoon concert with Illumina visiting from Brazil. And then at 7 p.m. again in the Janusz, 2 violinists in conversation, Nicola Daltricourt with Madeline Adkins. So a very busy day for her tomorrow. And tomorrow night's faculty concert features music by Schubert and Delius in the first half, with a foray into the late 20th and early 21st centuries with music by Argentine Osvaldo Golichov and Finnish composer Olli Mastonen. And so that's a wrap for tonight, the first night of the 2024 Sicmf. Thank you for joining us, and please let us know what you thought. Engage with us on our social media channels via the hashtag Sicmf 2024. Take a look at our website, Sicmf, for more information about the festival and its events. And finally, a very big thank you to our production team who worked tirelessly to make this live stream happen. And so until tomorrow, from me, John Woodland, thanks for joining us for this first day of chamber music magic, and good night.